Hello, everyone, and welcome to Out of Nowhere. My special guest today, I think, is Michael Orn. Michael is the world's leading authority on UFOs. Michael has 46 years of experience as a science researcher and began his study and research into UFO and the contacts of Billy Myers in 1979. Can we please welcome Michael to the show? Hello there.
Hi, Bob. Thank you very much for having me on.
I've been looking forward to this.
Me too.
Um, Tell us a little bit about yourself, because I'm sure there's people out there might not have come across you.
Well, certainly glad to attempt to fill some things in. I began researching the Billy Meyer contacts in 1979. And for those who don't know, Billy Meyer is a now 88-year-old Swiss man who has been presenting his information, his claims, his evidence for many, many years. He claims that his contacts with human extraterrestrials began when he was 5 years old in 1942, and that they continue to this day. The meetings continue face to face, fully human beings. They are not little so-called grays and evil aliens, people just like us, except far more advanced in many ways. And Billy began to be tutored by these people, literally, when he was 5. And his meetings have continued, as I said, throughout all these years. We publish, along with other people, the English language translations of the conversations that he has with the people that he's had. And we publish a lot of the information that dates back to the 1940s that he was publishing as a young boy. And it is even beyond the UFOs themselves. He has the most phenomenal evidence, really, in the world, independently authenticated, analyzed. And whereas today we have so many videos and images of lights in the sky, as you said, and some clearer and more interesting, Billy took between 1,200 and 1,400 photos, 8 films, a video that he's in too, while he's zooming in on a craft.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. His physical evidence also includes metal samples, metal alloy samples that were analyzed at IBM. They couldn't be duplicated, sound recordings, and all of this physical evidence that sets this case apart from any and all. Now, what really sets the case apart is the conversational content, the transcripts of his conversations with these people that includes just volumes of information. To me, the most important of which falls into 5 categories: scientific, environmental, geopolitical, economic, and medical. And it is this information that came to my attention when I first started to be able to read the transcripts. So let me explain that a little better, since we're going back to this beginning.
Yeah.
I find out about the case in 1979 when I get a book that I obtained in a bookstore in Los Angeles. It isn't until 1986 when I take a trip into Arizona. I was living in LA at the time. I take a trip into an area called Sedona, Arizona, which is kind of a mecca, if you will, of New Age, paranormal, metaphysical, UFO information, phenomena, the whole thing. I'm in a cafe with my daughter and a friend. There's one other guy in it. We wave him over to join us while we're waiting for our sandwiches. We get to talking. And of course, Sedona is, as I said, this mecca. And it has a reputation as being a location that has so-called energy vortexes all over the place. And we're talking, and somehow the conversation drifts into UFOs, and he brings up Billy Meyer. And I said, well, that's interesting. I've got his photo book at home, and it's very fascinating. And he says, well, do you have the contact reports, the contact notes? And I said, well, what's that? And he said, well, those are the conversations and Billy Meyer's been having. Now, this is 1986. We're meeting. He says,
My God.
he said, when you come back to LA, come on up and visit me. I've got 1,800 pages of
Oh,
transcripts in English from the time period of 1975 to 1978. And I said, I'll be there. So I go up there when I get back, and he's got a stack like this. I mean, 1,800 pages. And in these early days, they had what were called mimeograph machines. I don't know if that was big in England, but prior to Xerox and all of that,
yeah.
they cranked it off on these machines. And the interesting thing about it was, initially, as I start to read, is I'm realizing that whoever translated and transcribed this was not a Native American English speaking or British English speaker, because the verbs are at the ends of sentences and the structure is much more Germanic.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, it's fascinating. It's captivating information. And I read and I read and I read, and I stick these volumes. They were bound in 100-page volumes, stick them under the bed. 2 years later, I open up a local newspaper, and it says ozone damage tied to A-bomb explosion, something like that. And I'm going, what? This is familiar. And I'm reading, and it's from a major laboratory in California called Lawrence Livermore Laboratories. And they're saying that there's certain percentages of damage to the ozone that they've been able to determine, and there's this connection to atomic explosions. And I'm going, well, wait, I know this. How could I know this? I reach under the bed instinctively, the first block of 100 pages. I'm starting, and it's in there. The contacts are all numbered, Bob. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, yeah.
So I get to the seventh contact, as I'm recalling, seventh contact, there it is. They're starting to talk to him about the ozone damage. And they're saying that in addition to the damage done by various gases, is the connection to atomic explosions from Nagasaki and Hiroshima, the testing as well of nuclear bombs, leaks, radiation leaks from hospitals, all this, any and all of this nuclear atomic energy stuff that has been released deliberately or accidentally has contributed to rending holes in the ozone. Now, this is 1975. Your scientists don't know about it yet.
No.
Right? And they say, here's the percentages of damages at this time. And a lot of information, 3-4 pages of information in small print, but lots of stuff. Well, Lawrence Livermore didn't have that kind of extensive information, even in 1988. And I'm going, well, wait a minute. This is rather interesting. And I kind of file it away thinking, this is kind of interesting. Within 2 years, there's another article that appears in the news about it's by a Professor Paul Siegel in Northern California, Stanford University. It said oil earthquakes interact or something like that. And I'm going, what's this one? And it's about the connection between the extraction of petroleum and natural gases and earthquakes. And I'm going, oh, wait a minute. I know I've got this one. 1976. He's being told your extraction of petroleum, the extraction of natural gases, the mining of ores, and the building and overbuilding of large cities creates pressure on the tectonic plates. It destabilizes because you're extracting with the mining of ores, well, and especially the extraction of petroleum and natural gas, you're extracting the synovial fluid of the planet here, the plates, and you can't just pour water in the density it's different. And they go on about this and how the earth collapses in upon itself. I'm going, okay, I know. And I found the information, as I said. So I'm going to thinking to myself, this is about something even more important than the UFOs. Why would we say that? Well, the UFO evidence, unparalleled to this day, fantastic. And while now it's, it used to be a tabloid topic. Now it's like one of the top 3 topics in the world.
Global.
And theories and evil alien craft and all sorts of hysteria. But we can't, those of us that are interested, we can only go so far. We can look, we can think, we can imagine, but there's nothing tangible, applicable in our individual lives, really, that we can do, except the thought, the realization that if any of this is extraterrestrial, that means that there's other life in the universe. And then we can try to think on that and contemplate. And unfortunately, we get too much of this evil alien thing. And in the Meyer material, we learned that in the modern day, so to speak, there has been development on alternative craft, what we would call UFOs, when we were being called flying saucers back in the day. This goes back 110 years to 1950. It is. So that's, the UFO. But here, wait a minute, I'm reading stuff, scientific information. I mean, I remember reading through it. That's why it triggered my memories.
Yeah, we'll do.
Searching. Then I think to myself, this is a higher standard of proof. I start to go through, again, I start to read through the available, at the time to me, available contact reports. And I start paying more attention to the news, to things in newspapers, to things then in the burgeoning, online world, online events and TV, radio, any kind of media where they're announcing, especially interesting for me at the time, would be scientific things pertaining to this world, pertaining to anything outside of the world, because I remembered reading information about planets and throughout the solar system that Billy Meier was writing about, information that he was being given. And he's, in some cases, describing things that he is seeing when he is with these people in these craft. And it starts to get very rich. So this then, as I see all the scientific stuff, then I'm noticing that events happen in the world. An attack here, the death of a major leader, an assassination or a passing, all sorts of things. And then in 1995, I'm reading through an article that talks about a coming respiratory illness that will come out of an accidental leak in a laboratory in Guangdong, China.
Oh God.
Guangdong.
Yeah.
A few years later, SARS appears. And okay, then they're talking about BSE, the mad cow disease, and giving information on the only temperatures at which you can destroy these prions and all. And there's all sorts of stuff. And then I noticed, because it was early on in the information, that there is a lot of talk about the coming environmental disaster. This ozone damage is only one of the large elements of what we would start to experience and which would become unstoppable. And Billy is talking about every form of earthquake, seaquake, storm, tsunami, volcanic eruption, blizzard, typhoon, tornado, anything connected to what we call natural disasters. And he says back as early as 1948, he's like 12 years old or something, or 11 years old, and he's saying unnatural, man-made climate change, global warming, environmental disasters. And so we see this stuff, and the world starts to, the debate starts to arise. Is there such a thing as climate change? Is there a concern here? Is it just all hyped? And then you have a green movement with people of oftentimes questionable motivation and integrity and the rest of it. And we have to remember that there can be an event, a circumstance that is worthy of note, and that not everybody that talks about it or takes it as an agenda is going to be doing a service to the truth, to the scientific exploration, that which is necessary. So many people have hijacked the whole thing and provoked a lot of anger, controversy, um, turned a lot of people against the objective, critical thinking and evaluation of these issues because they politicized them
Of course,
and they
yeah.
made them a left-right type of a thing when in fact we should look at these things if we're going to.
Yeah,
As
you're totally right there, because if you start making predictions about things, what's going to happen in the future, people are going to say, there's something wrong with you.
that's right,
Totally.
they're going to say it. Now, I'm going to tell you something today, since we're on this track of the predictions of the future environment. In 1948, Billy Meyer, and I should say that when he's 5, he begins his meetings with an elderly man who first speaks to him in his mind. He hears him in his head, which freaks him out. He's a young boy growing up in Switzerland, and he and his father had seen a silver object flying overhead. He doesn't know what it is. His father says, well, maybe that's a secret weapon from Hitler, but I don't know. Shortly thereafter, young Edward Albert Meyer is hearing a man speak to him in his head, and he lives this time he's growing up in a beautiful pastoral part of, rural Switzerland, up in the mountains and all. And one day he feels drawn again to go into the woods, as he often does, and he walks in and he's feeling a beckoning. He'd been hearing the man speaking to him a couple of days before, or whatever. Suddenly he sees a man, an elderly man in what looks like a deep sea diver's suit, without a helmet, standing in front of a pear-shaped craft on 3 strut-like legs. And he said, when he's spoken about this and described it, he said, this man just seemed very benevolent. There was no sense of fear in me whatsoever. The man beckoned me to come forward. I did. And this began 11 years of meetings, being tutored, educated by this man, being with and traveling with this man to places around the world and off this world, outside of this world, and in this time, the past and the future. Now, of course, people can take that for what it is, and I don't have to prove that. What I've focused on, if you will, proving or showing that anybody, you don't have to be any kind of investigator, can determine the truth for themselves, is this information that we're talking about right now, this higher standard of proof. So when you're ready, I'll tell you the stuff from 48 that I think we're about to experience in the world.
Yeah, because I've jotted things down like global conflict, environmental catastrophes, epidemics, disease, social breakdown, drugs epidemic. But you go back to 1948.
Okay. That is one of the documents. He had posted things as early as 46, 47. In this one, it's a series of numbered sentences. And his first teacher, Svath, presented to him, gave him these predictions for the coming times. And there's a lot of fascinating stuff in all this material, but especially in here, what had caught my eye a few years back was information pertaining to the coming eruptions of certain specific named volcanoes. And there were 3 different countries at least spoke about it. The ones that caught my eye especially were in Italy. And what Svath told young Edward Albert Meyer was that there were going to be very strong earthquakes in central Italy in 2016. And these would be the precursors to the eruptions of 5 major volcanoes in Italy. And if I can remember them, because I'm not looking yet, Mount Etna, Vesuvius, Stromboli. There is also, I've always, Campi Flegrei. That's a main one. And there is one other there, and it'll pop up at some point in my mind. And he said, these are going to be extremely important when all of these volcanoes are active. at a certain point when they are becoming Mount Etna, that's the other one. That's been,
Yeah, Etna.
yes. So what will happen is at a certain point, these will be very dramatic and explosive. And with the eruption of certain volcanoes, parts of Italy may go into the sea. Wow. Okay. Of course, he talked also about northern Germany, and I'll come back to Italy, but northern Germany, there's a place called Eiffel Fields that is also a big caldera. He said that will eventually be like in northern Europe, Germany, there, it'll be a sea of fire. And then when the big caldera in America, Yellowstone, erupts, that may lead to just about the largest catastrophe that's ever occurred. Okay. Coming back to Italy, I began sending emails to people in Italy, to scientists whenever I could. Published, of course, over the years, we've published warnings about these volcanoes because we're not given a specific date and time. They did give in the beginning, in the early stages in the 70s, they would tell Meyer there'll be this eruption or that earthquake. This event will occur here and at this time, and he'd publish it and they would occur. But people wouldn't pay any attention. They just wouldn't go into seek and to understand what's going on, why, how. No. So they said, no more dates. We'll tell you the events. They will be out of sequence. So it's not about this, then this. Certain things will happen that we told you long ago that won't happen for a longer period of time, and vice versa. Campi Flegrei or Flegrei is now active again. Big earthquake activity, magma is on the move, I guess you would say. So we're on record of putting Billy Meyer's record into the record and forewarning as much as we can. This information, because a lot of your audience is going to go, Billy, who? What's this about? Prophecies? I just want to know about the UFOs. Believe me, you can go to our blog, show you just magnificent photographs, films. We've got the analyses that have been done, the authentication, top-level independent scientists. You don't know about this. I'm speaking to those people who don't know about it, because this has been deliberately suppressed for decades so that people will not delve into this. To date, and this is not a joke, it's not just a conspiratorial talk. There is a conspiracy of silence.
Yeah.
And that has primarily been, let's say, originates with the US Secret Services and other secret services that cooperate with it and filter in and provide the alternative and UFO community with a lot of distraction stuff that never happens and blah, 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 blah.
And Michael, have you had any visits from anybody telling you not to talk about it?
I haven't. And frankly, I'm grateful in a sense because Billy has survived 27 documented assassination attempts, the last 2 of which happened within, let's say, the last 3 to 5 months. I've interviewed eyewitnesses to 14. I've seen bullet holes. So during the last, at least one of the last 2 events, there are people that I know who were with him when the shots were fired. It's not a joke. It's like the real thing. What I've suffered through, there's some people that have threatened me, guys publish death threats, blah, 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 blah.
Abuse.
But, this comes with the territory. But no, what's happened is try to find, just throw into Google Billy Meyer case or my name or whatever. You'll find way down when you find it. Why? It's the most important. Look, I say to people, this is either the biggest, most impenetrable, longest running hoax in human history, or it is the single most important scientific information, event, phenomena, whatever, in all of science and human history. There's nothing in between. So what happens is we have a blog. We have nice international readership, but it's still at a lower level. People have to find it. And some countries, they don't even allow you to go to it's blocked.
Yeah.
And when my wife and I were asked by Billy to go somewhere to look into an archive, he thought there might be important evidence. It turned out there were a little less than a dozen photos that were taken actually by the lead investigator in the case of an interaction between a then top secret U.S. stealth plane and Billy Meier's second contactee, a woman, Askett, her craft. A whole series of photos that the investigator took at the risk to his life. It's a whole story we have on our site. And I informed some people in our government. They asked to have copies, digital copies. I sent them. There was a big governmental hearing going on. And instead of doing what they said they would do, which was to reveal this, they censored them. This material is basically suppressed and censored whenever possible. There's been, the inevitable leaks things have come through the cracks, and some places it fills a nice space.
Yeah.
So Billy Meier continues to meet with these people, continues to publish information about events that are coming in many fields, geopolitically for sure. And these events that are now unfolding geopolitically have long been foretold as well. And they were foretold in something called the Henoch prophecies and another series of prophecies called the Patale prophecies that go back to 1981, with earlier mentions in the 40s of these conflicts that we're having now, for the purpose that people would be warned and be alert and not allow certain things to happen. Pay attention when certain leaders popped onto national scenes, to realize that these people needed to be carefully scrutinized and watched and not elevated to positions of power. Well, the information in the case is not partisan politically. So they're not political people in that sense. They don't have an axe to grind, left or right, this one or that one. They're equal opportunity offenders. And this has been a very important part as we now see what's unfolding in Europe, Eastern Europe, that will embroil the whole world.
Yeah, it's amazing, Do you think Billy was chosen to take all this information on?
Yes. And I want to take any specialness in a sense a little bit. Yes, it's special because not everybody, obviously, since the age of 5 or at all, really can prove that they're meeting with people from another world. Okay. The story here is that these contacts between this particular race that has been falsely called the Pleiadians for a long time, a term that the so-called Pleiadians originated as a screen name.
Yeah.
1975, for reasons they explained. Listen, people are going to claim that they're meeting with us, so use this name. And as soon as anybody says Pleiadians, you'll know, no, you don't have to come and bother us. They're not meeting with us. There's no connection. Okay. They came out that they called themselves, their own name is the Plejaran, Plejaran, Plejaran people. Okay. And so Billy has been informed and has also published that these meetings that he has, these contacts, that there have been 6 people historically prior to him, going back about 13,500 years, some of whose names we know, who were also in this role as contactee prophets.
Ah, right.
And that the purpose has always been the same, and that the core information that is at the very foundation, the core of this case, isn't about extraterrestrials, UFOs, or even this fantastic body of prophetic information. It's about a teaching in this case that all human beings throughout the universe, or universes, we could say, as we evolve, that we need to fulfill certain understandings, certain steps. And it's not mystical so much as it is based in evolution, consciousness, the universal laws, how the universal laws are there for us to learn to live in harmony and accordance with. And they're very straight ahead. We are never individually, personally either punished or chosen for special favors or anything like that. Very often when I was growing up in the 80s, I used to do New Age comedy, just so you'll know my background. And I had a lot of fun with it.
Oh, I bet you did.
Yeah. And it was all sorts of things floating around as we began all of this. But in truth, there were these previous people. So you ask me, Billy Meier, there is every so often in a particular historical period of time, somebody who emerges who is ready, and somehow the core, let's say, energy, that which in terms, let's say when we use terms that we normally call spiritual terms, they call creation energy. And they say that which we've referred to as the spirit, the human spirit, they say is that aspect of creation energy that is present in every human being. Now, creation energy is present in every living thing, in everything in the universe, but there's a special form of it in human beings that has a role, a destiny over very long periods of time to evolve. And it is that the people that they choose, if you will, as the prophet contactee people, are people who have, let's just say, that is enlivening them. This creation energy that is enlivening them is a very ancient one. It has an ancient origin. It's enlivened many people before, even in prehistory, things we don't know about. And it's simply a matter of, there are people, like there's a term, the extraterrestrials don't use the term old souls and all that.
No.
But we kind of understand that there are people that seem to, they come into life already knowing certain things and ready to learn more. And they seem to be, they're not better than anyone else. They simply have.
I think where you're talking there, like Tesla and people like that, used to get downloads where they could invent things.
They invent things. They have talents that are already seeming to be developed or quickly developed. And sometimes these are blessings and curses at once. Very often you'll see young prodigies in life. And the funny thing, the blessing curse, there is some young prodigy, they come in at a very young age, they can do all this stuff. And then suddenly they hit puberty and hormones go off and their lives can take very different. Some carry through the development of the talent.
Yes.
Others can have a very rough ride because it's not about you're going to be a perfect being because you have this talent. It's just that, okay, in this teaching that Billy is the last official teacher, if you will, it is simply said, every human being is of equal value. The difference is maybe in terms of talents, accomplishments, abilities, character traits, but the destiny of this intrinsic creation energy. And this is what Billy has written over 60 books about. Of these books, only a small handful delve into anything about the UFOs. Yes, information about the extraterrestrials and these higher levels of, let's say, creation energy, formerly called spiritual levels, that exist in this vast universe, this creation. That's what this is about. But they needed to get our attention. First, the eye candy, all these fantastic photos and films, and oh my goodness. Then, oh, wait a minute, he's got information. Okay, and now it turns out that he's publishing things weeks, months, years, and decades before these events occur or the discoveries, are made. Whoa, the higher standard of proof. And then, what's all that about? You see, in Bob, in ufology, the unasked questions. If this is real, what's the reason for it? Nobody ever goes there. So here it is. The reason isn't for us, if you will. The reason isn't to chase the lights in the sky or get involved with the phenomena, to stay there. The reason for the contacts is to help us assure our own very threatened future survival.
Yeah.
And it is through that higher level of creation consciousness information in his books and articles that we can, as laymen, understand it and learn.
Yes, I totally agree with you there as well. Yeah. There's things, like with Tesla, like as soon as he died, they took all the information away. Oh, books and books and books. Never heard of it again. Just came straight in, took it all away, all his inventions, and a lot of it was for the future.
Yes, and Billy and his elderly teacher Svath met with Tesla before Tesla was murdered. He didn't commit suicide, as we can imagine. They sat with him, as Billy did with many interesting people, literally throughout history. I mean, when you get in, and he publishes this stuff just matter of factly through. I can't prove that stuff. I can only prove, and meaning anybody can prove to their own satisfaction, that the case is real and that the man is a space and time traveler. Plain and simple. That's what our new film is about. We call it Singularly Authentic, Definitive Proof of UFO Contacts of ongoing contacts with UFO, space, and time travelers. Ironclad. The kind of thing I've encountered. A judge who was a skeptic. I came to a MUFON event where I was shaking his head like this. No, can't be. What do you, sir? May I help you? I had a table there, Yes, I'm interested in UFOs. He said, this, older guy, his arms crossed over his. I said, yeah, sir. Okay. What do you do, sir? I'm a retired judge. Stares me down. I said, Your Honor, may I step into your courtroom? And the guy didn't miss a beat. Yes, come right in. How can I help you? I said, Your Honor, if I tell you that NASA's claim that they discovered in early 2000s, they discovered that the reason for the contraction of the surface of the planet Mercury is the metal core, but their claim that they discovered it's preceded by information from a friend of mine in Switzerland. Would I have to prove that he actually discovered it? He says, well, of course you'd have to prove it. And I happened to have that day one of the books.
Oh.
From Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Stevens. We had all the documentation. And in there, I knew right where this contact was. And I went to it and I said, Your Honor, do you see the copyright date in this book? He knew what I was driving at. He says, yes, I do. I said, over here, do you see where Billy Meier, this Swiss fellow, is asking an alleged extraterrestrial woman? He says, can you help me out here? I've always wanted to know the reason for the contraction of the surface of the planet Mercury. She said, well, yes, that's because of the iron core of the planet right there. That caused. And I said, in your courtroom, Your Honor, who prevails, NASA or? And he said, you do. I want the book. I want the film. He knew. Why? Because far more important, and a 10-year-old child can walk into court in 10 minutes and do this. You can't, as much as we can show, yes, these extraterrestrial craft, they were not made here. The science, scientists, blah, blah, blah. No, we couldn't do this, blah, blah, blah. Great. Still, people can argue. Oh, it can't be true. When you have a book, and I'll jump to another thing after I say this.
Okay.
When you have a book with a copyright date, That means that what's in that book, you can verifiably, you can stand on legally. It was published at least by that time, at least. But that's the first publication. It doesn't mean it's true, folks. And I offend people very often because we get into discussions with some people and they want to cite different holy books as being the real thing. And I say, look, whatever you believe, that's fine. But let me just explain that every religion, in the terms of the major religions, is based on the statement. In effect, you can summarize it saying, what's in this book is true because this book says it's true. That's inadmissible in a court of law or in a kindergarten. That doesn't suffice. However, when you have something in a book from our more mundane world, if you will, whatever it is, at least you can know it was published then. So we have well over 250, probably closer now to 400, but over 250 specific examples of prophetically accurate scientific, environmental, geopolitical, economic, and medical information verifiably published before the events or discoveries occurred, and which were only possible with either space and or time travel. I rest my case, and you can too if you do it. So that's where we went with that.
The talk about the cosmic threat of 2029.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Well, in 1981, Billy Meier is meeting with Plejaren, and they tell him that your world is going to face a deadly threat from outer space. And they say that they call it the red meteor. And they say this comes as an unprecedented entry into our greater solar space, if you will. It comes from beyond the solar space, if you will, enters into it from, let's say the extreme beyond Pluto, and then comes into the solar system, the solar space. And it is on a trajectory towards the Earth, and it needs to be deflected by your scientists. I'm kind of jumping to the points a little bit here.
Yeah.
This is a large object, it's coming in, and it is going to arrive and impact your planet if not deflected. And they also have the dates as April 13th, 2029, April 13th, 2036, as NASA, who discovered this object in 2004, I think it's like 33 years later, whatever like that, 2003, 2004, they call it asteroid Apophis. They're not worried about it. Oh, no problem. Asteroid Apophis. They name it Apophis, which is, I guess, one of the ancient Egyptian gods of destruction. But they say there's no threat from it. Well, they've changed their tune, and they're going back and forth. They change information. Meier never changes anything. He simply said, it's this big, it's coming this way. And they say, we will tell you that if it is not deflected, if your scientists don't come together, don't realize that they shouldn't try to blow it up, because you don't want asteroid pieces, comets, whatever you want to call it, meteor piece, raining down on Earth. If you don't deflect it, it will impact here between the North Sea, you're familiar with that, and the Black Sea. And when it does, it's going to create catastrophic environmental challenges. Millions of people will die rather soon and thereafter. And they describe it. So I actually went to the trouble to find an artist who would illustrate this right from the Meier material, along with a couple other fascinating things that is in the Meier material. We made a comic book out of it, and it's online. Right. People can go and see it for free. Everything that I'm speaking about, they can get at or linked from our blog. They can drop me an email, just help anybody out that's interested. And all of the stuff that I'm talking about, with the exception of, you want to buy Billy's books or a new film or something, the films, because I've got 4 documentaries out. Yeah, we pay for all this stuff with our own money. Please help yourself, buy, support the work, or don't. There's plenty of free stuff. There's plenty of free videos. Just learn about this and determine the truth for yourself. So asteroid Apophis is coming, folks. And then in England, I think they have some, trendy people having a asteroid day thing. And it's all, everything, of course, is made into a silly commercial, trendy, benign kind of a fun event. It's not going to be fun if we don't act in time. The problem being, we, the United States, are supposedly bound by a treaty where we are not allowed to do what the plan said, which is to launch a rocket with an atomic warhead, nuclear charge, that is detonated at the right proximity so the shock wave nudges the incoming red meteor asteroid Apophis just enough. A couple of degrees is all it takes, because if you catch it, you intercept it here and it's coming this way, and you go, whoop, then suddenly it's coming way over here, right? We know how that works, little billiards. So what's going to happen is, if we don't do that, it's going to be a catastrophe for the planet and the people of the planet. We can't, America, supposedly, who has all this great rocketry and plenty of weapons, we already know, supposedly can't put a nuclear weapon into space. But other countries are not bound by it, like Russia and China. After we published this information and made it fairly well known, Russia called for a project to deflect asteroid Apophis, and also called on China to engage China's space system. Then they start talking about deflecting asteroid. They read this material at the higher levels of government. We've been told this for years. And so far, NASA doesn't want to trouble itself with anything, maybe sending a probe out, whatever. But, they're a little slower because, hey, if it's going to impact, it's not going to bother us. After all, we don't live on a round planet, right? What happens here can't possibly affect us, but it will. So it'll affect everybody, one way, shape, or form. The planet is interconnected. Earthquakes, tsunamis, you name it, volcanic eruptions, nuclear power plants.
Oh, yes.
Good night. So they have tried to warn us about many things, but the suppression, largely originating with the United States Secret Services, military government, to keep people from knowing about this, from knowing about our true, very extensive history, prehistory, the comings and goings, for better and for worse, of extraterrestrials on the planet dating back a long time. This isn't, a magical, we are the space brothers, come to you, okay. This is the real deal, and these folks come from a history of Star Wars warriors on steroids who had to settle down after millions of years of evolution, where they had all this space traveling stuff and they were doing unpleasant things in their reaches in the universe. And then they had to learn higher truth and to settle down and to stop being warlike and dominating and blowing up planets and things. So all that stuff's in there. There's a lot of stuff. We can't prove a lot of that. What we can prove is that they're provided the most accurate information we will ever see.
Well, that's the way to do it, really. Just to try and keep getting it out there for people to understand. Buy the books, read into it, and but there's been something going on for months about something in the sky, what's going to come down. I don't know if that's the same one that they were on about, a UFO as big as massive, keep coming closer to Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what they're talking about? What's getting closer and closer? Or is that something else? That's
separate. So based on my limited knowledge about the object, I will interweave here some information. And I'm going to try to find the contact in which Billy says, it's an interesting thing. He says, there are some civilizations who, in the process of developing space travel, what they do is they will take a very large rock-like object and actually put their craft propulsion stuff and everything within it. So a large space rock can hold intelligent beings, high technology. That being said, this is again couched in the threat. This is what sells books for people. There's a Harvard professor, his name is Avi Loeb, and he had the first space rock threat or object he was concerned with. I believe it's pronounced Oumuamua. It was given a Hawaiian name, and this was some years ago back. I contacted him. I actually had about a minute and a half with him on his cell phone, and then I sent him information because he was going from class to class. I said, "You need to know about this information," because he's all, he's extraterrestrial life and all. There's a lot of scientists now that have jumped on the extraterrestrial bandwagon, publishing, of course, entirely theoretical books about extraterrestrial life, because not a single one of them, including Avi Loeb, have a piece of tangible evidence, but they all want to, also make money, and just in case anything else.
Yeah.
So in terms of this object, here's a few things I can say. Any space traveling race that was a threat to us, I'd say 9 out of 10 chances they would be a very high-tech race, and a very high-tech race isn't bumbling along at these slow, let's say 6 figures per kilometer speeds, 200,000 kilometers per hour, whatever, 600, who cares? Because the Plejaren and other races that have come here in the past, they have far more advanced technologies. The Plejaren can come here almost instantaneously. They used to take 7 hours to get here from 500 light years, and then they sped it up to 7 minutes. But the point being that any objects that are intelligently controlled, that are going to travel from the depths of true outer space, light years from here, are not going to travel at 100,000 miles per hour. They're going to have to travel above light speed or above. And, we can't do that. Anyway, they're not going to come here and be so easily, identified, discerned. If somebody's targeting us and knowing anything about us, more than likely, not exactly the smartest thing, because when this whole concern about evil aliens, a lot of it started with this guy, not that he's the originator, Lou Elizondo, a supposedly former U.S. intelligence agent who got involved, worked his way into Towards the Stars Academy, the rock and roll musician who was involved in all that.
Oh, yeah.
And then he, along with another guy who's involved in the U.S. government, defense industry, and all this, named Chris Mellon, they moved out of that after they'd gotten their own presence and notoriety. And now, Lou has been on this quest to bring the truth. He'll always tell the truth. And, well, he's got himself a book deal. He refused to answer my questions about, does he know about the Billy Meier case? He's only going to tell the truth. There's a video, I have it on my site, where he's in a car where another supposedly former military intelligence guy is on cell phone. We're listening to me in the background on one of my things where I'm talking about Elizondo. The guy turns his cell phone, and there's Lou smiling and giving me a thumbs up. Look, this is the UFO industry, folks. And any and everything you get that reaches you through the media, 9.9 times out of 10 is approved. You're going to get it because it's allowed. You're not going to get Billy Meier's information so easily. You're not going to find it. I did get, there were 4 interviews with me published in one of the UK papers about Apophis. Mainly when I was interviewed by this guy, 4 different articles. Apophis is coming and this and that. And all, they managed to get through over there in your land, but that's it. I sent other information to more media outlets internationally. Nobody will touch it, even though all you get is this rehashed thing from, and the UFO experts of the day. You have Ross Coulthart from Australia, nice guy. He's babbling away, very earnest. about all this stuff and about Lou Elizondo and the secret this and all this stuff. Knows nothing. I contacted him when he first came out several years ago. I sent him the Meyer material. His answer to me was, well, listen, I've got to follow up on this other stuff now that's in front of me because I have a family to feed. Literally wrote that to me.
Oh,
So they are assisted. They get into the news with ease. They're not going to have a problem with that. And I've offered any and every UFO expert. I said, I'll be glad to, because some of them, somebody said, well, Billy Meyer, that's a hoax. I said, I'll be glad to discuss it with you, debate it indeed, if you want. If you have 15 minutes before you're humiliated. And there was one scientist took me up on this, a guy named Robin Hansen from the US. And basically I have the videos of it, and I just let him speak mainly. You can tell that so when I get rolling, I know it's a little hard to get a word in edgewise. And I got up, my wife says, you got to stop talking. I said, okay, but yeah, I'm excited. She says, give people, anyhow, I'll just say this. Robin Hansen, I did that. I said, and tell me about this. And he was waxing on and on. He was about UFOs and extraterrestrials. So I said, well, he didn't present any evidence, of course, because they don't have it. I said, I'd like you to look at this. And I start to bring up Billy's photographs and I start talking about the case. And you start to see in this, the guy had been sitting there talking and he starts
fidgeting.
Oh my gosh. And so he didn't really want to have the conversation. I had another one with a really nice guy. They're nice people. I have nothing against anybody personally. And I'm just trying to get some honesty here. There's a fellow named, I'm sorry, remembering, it may have been Chang, but a very brilliant scientist from JPL. And he was very interested in this topic. I got him into a conversation and he's talking, and I start to go into some stuff and everything. And he even gets as far in the thing as saying, I want to invite you to come to a presentation I'm doing for this group, a Chinese American group. All of a sudden, it was beautiful. And I, to this day, I say, I have respect for the guy. And then somehow, I guess he delved into the Meyer material further and he's uninvited me.
Yeah.
That's happening because he doesn't have any evidence. Has great theories about why any existing extraterrestrial races would now long be dead. Okay, so we have a problem here with getting past this industry's co-opting the truth. So I thank you today for daring to have the conversation, letting people find out. And I respond to all my emails and challenges, but I direct the challenges. I say, here is the United States Air Force Office of Special Investigation, Department of Defense, Supervisor Investigators assessment of why the case is real. Here's a U.S. astronaut talking about the authentic photos from this man in Switzerland who meets with extraterrestrials. And here's a bunch of other people who already done it. So go there and have your fight with them. We know. How about going farther into it, and then we can have a conversation. So we welcome people. I am not deliberately an antagonist. I just don't like it when people suddenly pop up who think that they are researchers, and not a one of them is a researcher on a firsthand basis. They don't go. I've been to Switzerland 22 times. I've met with Billy, interviewed him, done films and asked questions firsthand. I want to see this. I want to know about that. I know the original. I knew, two of the no longer with us investigators.
Mike, what's he like as a man then, Billy?
I'm sorry? What's he like as a man?
What's he like as a general person?
He's the most, in the most wonderful sense, the most ordinary, present human being. We would sit as three of us or six of us, and he would be one of us. That's how he is. He is one. He lives to be of equal value. He knows he has a role. He knows this is unusual and different. He knows because people try to kill him all the time because they're not able to handle it. But what I noticed in my first conversation with the year 2000, go there with a friend. We have an introductory thing. He happens to be coming out of a building, shake hands. The next day or so, I'm there to do what other people do when they first go there. It's no longer done there because of the dangers that are present, but people would work together on the property so they could meet each other and help with some work on the land. I loved working in the forests, helping to clear the fallen trees and great stuff.
Oh,
But I
really?
got to do that I never had done. And it is the first day that I'm there and I'm out working, and Billy is outside. He works with people and helps things. And he calls me over and he asks me, he says, "What do you know about this man in America? We've heard from him. We don't know about him." And here I am. I'm talking to him like I'm talking to you now, but as if we were standing 1.5 feet from each other. And while I'm explaining and having a conversation, I am so aware of the thoughts that are going through my head, and they are this: gee, he's an ordinary human being. He's receptive to me. He's not trying to impress me. He's not defending. He's not trying to show me how special he is. He's actually listening to the answers to the questions. He's interested in our exchange as one person with another. Every time I've met with him, that's who Billy is. And he's that way. I've observed him with his family, with the people who work closest to him, and with complete strangers. He treats people the same way. And that
Really?
is openness, respect, nothing to prove. He's got a good sense of humor. I've seen him yell, when he's angry. But one day I'm on the property with him and some other people. And one of the people who used to be there, a wonderful fellow named Silvano, who I really loved working with because he knew so much about land and working with the different things, the trees and everything.
Oh,
And
yeah.
he's up, how people who are living in the rural environments and farming and doing things like that, and all these people aren't classical farmers per se. Yeah, they grow food there and all, and they used to have some animals, but this is a little expanded kind of an existence. Silvano is up on a tree branch, and he's got a power saw in his hand, and he stops cutting because Billy's waving at him, but the saw is still going. You know how it is when they still are running, and Billy's yelling, because we're 20 yards from the guy, whatever it is, and 20 meters, whatever, and he's yelling at him. He's shaking his fist at him. So I'm looking at Billy because Silvano's standing there with the saw going, and he's shaking his head. And there's a Dutch guy on the other side of Billy, Harry Dicker, and he's standing there. And I say, "Harry," because he spoke English as well. "Harry," and what's this about? Because Billy keeps saying, he says, he's trying to point out to Silvano that there's a chain that's on the tree limb thing, but it's also wrapped around Silvano's leg. So when Silvano cuts that branch, he's going to be pulled right down off of there. And Billy's trying to tell him, "Stop, don't do that." So finally, Silvano caught the message. But that was the only time I'd seen Billy. There was one other time later where I'd seen him very animated, but yelling at somebody. And then finally, Silvano gets it and they move on. But he's just a normal guy who knows more. Billy knows more about agriculture, biology, the land, plants, growing things than anybody I can think of or know of. And he supervised the planting of over 10,000 trees on what they took over, which was in 1978, a barren property with a rundown farmhouse that had no running water or electricity. And Meyer, he has one hand. Meyer built the retaining walls on hillsides. He did all this stuff literally single-handedly till people came to help him. An amazing man. And at the same time, while he did that during the day, he worked as a night watchman and then came home. He had a family of 3 children he's raising. So when you delve into his history, there are things in there. And this is where another tangent. In the late 1950s, he's known as the Phantom in the Middle East, wearing an Arabic headdress, a Swiss jacket, carrying I think a .357 Magnum and a knife. He was hired by police departments in Pakistan, East Pakistan, Turkey, and India to bring in serial killers and mass murderers, because in his earlier years as a teenager, in a very turbulent tumultuous time of his life, he ran away from Switzerland and joined the French Foreign Legion.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, we have this in our films. The first full-length film we did is called The Silent Revolution of Truth. And it's a download now that we've got available on our site. And when you see, we show you all the photographs, and Billy speaks about all these different things. And I mean, you're going, this man has done all this. This man has written 60 books, hand typed in German, along with 45,000 pages of information, up to 60 to 100 words per minute in German, caps lock, every other thing, because in German, the nouns are all capitalized. And we have a video and they're showing it. You go, wait a minute, all this and this too, and the UFOs and the meetings and the prophecies and the teaching. And here's a guy who just doesn't go out, doesn't do interviews. He tried earlier in his life. He felt he wasn't good at it. He's made conversational videos with some people there. I've got videos with him in all of our films, in separate videos and things. We put it out. He explains who a lot of these UFOs are coming from. That when he's explained the secret military origin, and that a lot of what we've seen, terrestrial forces, 4 different countries, including Russia, the UK, China, France, secret militaries have been working. There are 3 different groups below the surface of the Earth. At least 2 of them are for sure below the surface. 1 are future Earth people observing us. They don't interact. Future Earth time travelers. 2 other groups below that their ancestors were here ruling in different parts of the globe. Extraterrestrial origin, Egypt.
where can, when you talk about these films and books and
Yes.
your books, where can people get these books?
If they come to They Fly blog, we have a shop that is linked from there. It takes you right to the shop. If anybody has trouble, and probably shouldn't be too hard, there's an email contact for us, but we have 4, actually now 5 downloads in the film department. The first one was done as a lecture, and I call it a lecturementary in 2004. And at that time I said, the Meyer contacts, the key to our future survival. And it was a big overview of everything up to 2004. And then we did this, The Silent Revolution of Truth. I did a film called As the Time Fulfills, 55 examples of prophetically accurate information, not just in science, spanning everything. Crazy stuff. Billy foretold things that, I mean, it's just like every field you can think of. And I'll say this about recent stuff, and we touch on it in the film, and I have it all in my blog extensively. We published beginning in February of 2020, when I received, on I think February 20th, we began publishing maybe 3 days later, the information from the Plejaren extraterrestrials on COVID, everything. And nothing was stated as a theory. They said, this is a pandemic. This is going to be very bad. Here are the steps we advise you to take. Here are some of the factors. We published that. I started at that time reaching out in my state of Arizona, throughout every place I could, reaching outside of the state. We had 5 cases at that time, 57 cases in all of America. February 23rd, March 5th, when I'm putting stuff out, not a single governmental, medical, media source of any sort, right down to not even any paper, station, television, radio, internet, nobody would look into this. And we now have what we call online the new online COVID test. Haven't updated it for a while, but even as of now, 44 ironclad examples that Billy Meyer published factually accurate information, subsequently corroborated by the CDC and the WHO, published on Reuters and CNN and all. Billy Meyer is the first person also, not only in terms of the SARS in 1995, but November 2019 says this version of this SARS, this advanced COVID SARS-2, whatever you want to call it, escaped from a laboratory in Wuhan. It has nothing to do with an origin in a wet market or what have you, bats. This was started not by Bill Gates or any of the people think started the disease. It goes back to two very prominent people. One was a leader of a big country. The other one was a disgraced former president of the United States of America. The Chinese leader's name was Mao Zedong, and the American was Richard Nixon, who had been humiliated and forced from office. He had opened the doorway to the American-Chinese communications. He knew Mao Zedong, and he brought and facilitated bringing certain biological material to Mao Zedong for the expressed purpose of creating a pathogen that he wanted intended to be released on the American people in punishment for his humiliation. It first escaped. Mao Zedong, they started secretly developing this in labs. It wasn't done under the auspices of the Chinese government. This was a top secret development. And so it first appears in Guangdong, and Meyer says there were 3 laboratories subsequently that were involved in Wuhan. And he talked about scientists who have been contaminated and have now died before we knew that there was the leak and that there had been scientists who were sick from it. This was just corroborated also just a few months ago by our president and our government and all that. This is it, folks. This is what's kept from you. This is not over. This disease, the one we encountered was something like the 5,000th and something mutation of the original pathogens that they had been working on. It combined with the flu virus in some way. We have it online. All the documentation is there, and Billy has it all in German as well, and we publish all the English stuff. There's a British site that'll publish in German and in English. So this is where people can go. This website, They Fly Blog, is where our bookstore is, where the films are, and the site is full of the free. I'm mentioning this because we have well over 2,000, 2,500 articles on every aspect of this case, every contact report, current time, and a link to all the older ones. So you will know what's coming. Billy warned in 1958 and in 87 about AI. It would trick people. We would be fooled. CGI would be the start. Of course, this is all AI stuff. Yeah. And then in the coming time, in 1987, during the war they warn about is coming, the Western forces and others, in addition to nuclear, atomic, chemical, biological, laser controlled, there would be the cloned and computer controlled weapons, AI. And the ultimate danger, beyond also what will happen from these weapons being used, will be that they will turn against humankind to the degree that there is a possible extermination ultimately of life. And if we haven't done it by that time to ourselves with all this insanity, that is the danger we face from it. And AI, and some scientists, even I think one of the first persons to develop AI is now warning, but this headlong rush, it's so much fun and so trendy in America. Kids can now in earliest grades consult AI because they don't want people to think for themselves. This thing is taking over. I'll do a search online for something, some information. That's great. I don't want anything thinking for me, writing my article.
No, it's strange you're saying that. I was only talking to a friend of mine yesterday. I said, kids at school now can just go on AI and they can write something for them. exam papers and do anything for them now. Don't have to even think for themselves.
No. And real human relationships. I noticed this going back maybe 20 years ago. It started to be extremely difficult to have conversations in this country, especially face to face. Not that at that time, being 60 years old or whatever, I'm not having reason to necessarily interact with a lot of younger people, except in restaurants, as service people, in different places where younger people were working. And I don't mean that they were all stupid people. They're hardly that. A lot of people here in this town, universities, but I noticed a lot of people already had lost a certain sense of what it is to speak to somebody in real time, face to face. I made a joke that I think I'll buy a blank, transparent computer screen. So if I see them around young people, I'll hold it up so they won't feel intimidated or awkward. We'll pretend like we're really talking over online instead of in person.
Because another thing as well is everybody's got a phone. You go to a restaurant now and they've all got phones out.
Yep.
Nobody's communicating to each other.
We're any of us, whatever, when we reflect on this, we try to talk about it, people go, what are you talking about? What's with you? If they're this phone addicted, and I mean, people walking across streets, you have to honk at people here. Okay, it sounds old fashioned to want to point this out, but what's coming from this level of technology? Oh, people are going to be inflated on clouds and all the things you can do with it, and how it is far smarter already than a lot of people. It has that capacity. It will be an unstoppable phenomenon unless it is stopped now, and it won't be, because Billy has explained with it. In addition to the next 2,500 years of environmental upheaval, 2,500. If going online, if you go online like YouTube and you look for environmental upheaval, earthquakes, flood, Europe, he'd already said, parts of Europe. This goes back decades when he said it. Parts of Europe will become a swamp. And I'm looking at the flooding. I'm looking at the deluges. We don't get it otherwise in the news here, but it is all over YouTube. You can look for weather, volcanic activity, all this stuff. And you go, what? Where's that going on? Oh, Spain, Asia, all parts of Europe, Switzerland, everywhere. We cover this in our new film called Singularly Authentic. We're showing all these pieces of all this so people can do your research, folks. You've got AI, go ahead, but don't be misled if you're told a story. Go to YouTube to start with, this, check out things. And
well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been very interesting.
My pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity, the willingness. Thank you, Bob. Anytime.
Oh, it's brilliant. I'll have you back on as well in the future as well, because it's a fascinating subject. We need to get it out there more.
Well, you are doing what a lot of people here who claim to be interested in UFOs and extraterrestrials and all this stuff and want to talk to the top flight people, what they won't do, because we're not that glamorous here. This is uncomfortable. What do you do after you get this information and look into it? Who are you going to talk to? I mean, it's not me, it's this. Where are you going to go? None of these scientists know what the hell they're talking about. We'll see what happens with the latest Atlas 1 or whatever, the 3-1, whatever they're calling it. I don't know. Maybe it's got some ET connections, but it's certainly not going to take anybody by surprise. We have military that has all sorts of horrific stuff to defend against things, and you're giving us a big notice. So anyhow, I thank you. I want to be able to
thank you.
I want to put this up for my people. So you'll send me a link and I will publish.
I will do. I'll send you the recording.
Thank you so much again. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Have a lovely weekend.
You too, my friend.
I hope so. I hope the weather's nice this weekend for us.
This is one of the weekends in which we and other people around the world do what's known as a Salome peace meditation that was given, in this case, from these people and is done simultaneously on our behalf by over 3.2 million extraterrestrial human beings living in their federation Or so
Oh.
we're told.
Sounds very nice. Thank you.
Pleasure.
You take care.